them, and the first one is the financial variance report. The second one will be the EA Network Centre income and expenditure. So I'd like to move.
I'll move.
Second, Liz, and second, Angus. We received them. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. So back to page 13 of the variance report. Just note there on the roading, we used some monies from our council's disaster insurance reserve, and I'm just wondering how we replenish that account, or do we? Erin?
Through the Mayor, with the payment for the work that we've pulled in from the reserve, that will be reflected at the year end through an appropriation from that reserve to the transport area to fund it. So that won't be in here yet, and as I understand, that work's still being carried out.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, we've dropped that reserve down at disaster. If we, will we replenish it back to the level it was or more in future years? Is there a plan for that? Because if our next disaster comes along, there's nothing in it, it's pointless having it. You know what I mean?
We can look into that.
Yeah. Okay. Page 14 and 15. Oh, Stuart. Sorry.
Yeah, page 13, Mr. Mayor. I see there's a big variance in road capital expenditure because we included the amount we applied to from NZTA, but we only got 50% for the low risk. Why would you put that in where obviously we're not going to get that money? Well, shouldn't we put the real figure in that we got from NZTA? It would look like we had spent what we've got. It looks as if we're just sitting on half it, not spending it.
Are you referring to the budget figure that's sitting there?
Yeah.
Because
yes.
the budget was set through the LTP, so we can't just change that. So that's gone through, and that's why there's an explanation in the report. So we can't just change the budget.
Thank you. Roger?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up from your question about the council's disaster self-insurance reserve, how, and the comment was to look into replenishing it, how is it started in the first place? Like, where does the money come from to build the fund?
So I'm not completely sure of that. Let us bring you back an accurate report as to how that fund was established, how it received the money it did, and how we might plan to replenish it going forward.
Thank you.
Page 14 and 15. (16 and 17). Just a question on page 17 on Sunday Ashburton Wastewater. Talks about the ARS project and the buffer tank, which is decommissioning. Have I read in the paper that's happening now?
That's exactly right. It is happening now. It started this week.
Yep. This report's not saying that though.
This report's for April, so now it's June at the moment. If it started last week, it would still be in June.
It says in here it'll be rescheduled until the spring.
Yes. So
I assume that's
yes.
changed in the meantime.
It has been changed. We managed to get ACL to get onto it sooner than later, and they reprioritised their work, so they do it now.
Okay, that's fine. It's the same project. It's yeah. Good. 18, 19. Angus?
Mr. Mayor, 119, and I've checked it. I think I've got it. Sorry, page 19. I think I've got it right this time. Operating expenditure, stock water. The budget for the full year was 1,039,000. We've already spent by the end of April 1,071,000. My question is, how much will it be out of, and what will the percentage of budget overrun be at the end of the year, at the end of June?
That's detail, and I'm just I'll need to get my eyes over and report back probably in the activity briefing next week. We're just finalising exactly where we are in the current and what's left for the next 2 months following this one.
Angus?
So, supplementary. So it's not that we've got less water races for the same number of expenditure, thus less ratepayers.
No, typically our work is largely around the mains and cleaning the mains. So as we reduce the stockwater races, it's not making that much of an effect on the actual work on the races. It's probably just a matter of timing of the year and our expenditure and where the events that affects the differences.
You can update it, the activity brief.
We can do that, yes, in more detail. Yep.
Yep. Page 21. Just on capital, on waste reduction and recycling, capital income refuse management, 3% of the budget. There's an explanation over there, but I don't. It doesn't seem to flow.
For the capital income on this report, most of the capex that says yes, there will be a part of the amount that's been planned to be, usually it's lent is also a yes. It's just this report doesn't reflect that. So that should, because most of our capital projects are funded via loans,
Yeah.
the majority of those should also have a yes on them.
So it hasn't been spent, so it hasn't been income.
Well, we haven't raised the debt yet
Yeah,
because it's
okay.
not, yeah, or it may not be spent yet.
Yeah, thanks. 22, 23. 24, 25. 26, 27. Just a question there on page 26, and it's the reserves and campgrounds. The earthquake strengthening of the Rakaia Hall, subject to a workshop. Hamish, do you know when we're having that workshop? Yeah.
I don't, but I hope Mr. Fabish does.
Oh, yeah.
Just through you, me and Neil, staff have called a meeting, I think it's for next week, to actually discuss that, what that might look like, so, and to put that workshop together as soon as we can.
Okay, I just had a function at Rakaia, just been the weekend, and they were at the hall, and they were asking for them to be involved in that workshop as well. Yeah, good. Thank you. 27, 28, 29. 30, 31. 32, 33. 34, 35. I just have a question on 35. It's the operating expenditure of non-allocated is still 0%. What would we spend that on? 137,000.
I'll have to go and have a look at that. We don't have a budget in that area, so there may be something that needs allocating out to other departments, or I'll have a look and check what that is.
Okay, because there's an income on the other side of it as well. Who's up there? Angus.
Would we allocate that to footpaths now?
We'll have a look at it first, Angus. See where your thinking's coming from, though. Diane.
Page 28, commercial property, I see there's unbudgeted capital expenditure of 1.5 million relating to the purchase of property affected by the designation of the bridge. Now, I would have thought, knowing that we have to buy property, that we would have had some money sitting in a budget somewhere for that.
You never know when the the seller's going to offer the property, I think. Is that, Hamish?
Yes, that's right. Unless Tony's got anything further to add. No.
Happy with that? Yeah.
Not really, because I mean, it's been in the planning for so long, and one must know that the properties are coming available. I just would have thought there would have been some budget, something in a budget for it, when it says it's unbudgeted and we know that it's going to happen. Anyway, I just wanted to ask that question as to how come it is unbudgeted.
I'm sure staff would have a question as to how would they know the property's going to become available?
Well, given discussions we've had in previous workshops, they have a plan of what they want to buy.
That's a willing seller, willing buyer. Some of the sellers aren't willing to sell yet. I think it would be hard to budget
I
when
just
they
would
haven't
have,
decided they're going to sell.
so I just thought
Yeah,
that
that's right.
knowing it's going to happen, there would have been some reserve put aside.
I think the reserve's there, it's just when it happens, yeah. Yeah, a good question. Tony?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So through the chair, yes, there is the property reserve that's available for that. Officers are bringing a report to council in the middle of August around this matter.
I will go.
Angus?
Maybe I will go. Mr Mayor, would I be correct that not the previous council, but the previous council, when it decided that was the route and there was property involved, that they were going to make sure that the property account was always in a good healthy reserve, because we did not want to pressurise the landowners at the time into a date of selling. It was their choice if they wished to. We were a willing buyer if they were a willing seller, but we did not want to pressurise them in any shape or form, and that was how it was left at the time. Would I be correct?
You probably would be correct, and we designated that land, so there is only now one buyer for that land, and it's council, unless we lift the designation, and we're not planning on doing that. So you probably are correct, yeah. We need to have funds available to buy those properties as they come up.
We did not want to put pressure on those landowners.
No, correct. Willing buyer, willing seller. Page 36, 37. Just a question on the people and capability. It's 390,000 favourable. We're going to get 120 by year end. What's the difference made up of? Sarah?
Through the chair, when I was investigating that, there are a number of other costs that I do believe will be spent in the next, well, they have been spent this month and will continue to be spent, but I just wanted to flag that they're lower values, so they're under the 50k mark, so they're not flagged at this level, but the one that was higher was the 120, and hence me including it in the report. So, yeah, that's how it sits.
Okay, thanks. Page 38, 39. Forty, 41. John?
Yeah, just a question. I note that we've got internal borrowing of $3.1 million on Three Waters assets, i.e. wastewater and stormwater. With the government about to nationalise these assets off us for the price of the borrowing on them, would we not be better to transfer that internal borrowing to external borrowing to make sure that we get paid back on it?
Hamish?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We contemplated that matter a year or two ago and did start to move some of the internal borrowings to external. Since then, there has been advice received through the process that internal borrowing will still be regarded as debt. So there is no obvious risk that that debt won't go with the assets to the new entities in the event that that reform takes place. So that isn't a reason any longer to convert to external debt. There may be other reasons around use of funds and interest rates and such like, but we would expect to get internal debt repaid the same as the external debt removed.
John, supplementary?
Is that guaranteed, signed by Ms Mahuta?
It's certainly really clear in the vast array of material we get on Three Waters, so we're taking it as being the government's position on the reform.
Just in contrast to that point, the internal borrowing during May, we took up external lending to convert that to external borrowing, so that we won't have internal borrowing sitting in our balance sheet. So it'll all be external.
Okay. Page 41, 42. Just looking at the debtors on page 42, 3 months, they seem to have jumped up quite a bit. Is that alarming?
No, because rates are due in May, so the invoicing's been done at this point.
I was looking at the other debtors, not the rate debtors. Went from about 100,000 up to 500,000. 3 months. Even the 2 months has jumped up quite a bit as well.
We'll have a look into that.
Yep.
I think you'll find the negative April debtors is where there is debtor invoices to be raised for revenue received. So I'll chase that up with the team.
Okay. That concludes the variance report. We'll move on to the EA Network Centre income and expenditure. Just the one pager. John?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I note that our fees and charges are only at 51% of budget, but I note that the personnel costs are actually running 8% ahead of budget. And I thought, you know, your personnel costs would have been running at least below budget. Is there a reason why they're running 8% above?
Steve?
Yeah, just through you, Mayor Neil, look, it might pay for us to look into that, because I know we've had a constant level of unfilled vacancies. So yeah, that might be incorrect. So I'll work with Erin to see what's happened there. Thanks for raising it.
Okay. Stuart?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I don't think a lot of our ratepayers realise how much it costs to run this centre. I see Christchurch City going to build their new stadium for $685 million. It's going to cost the ratepayers a net $4 million a year to run. So, I mean, when you look at our stadium, it is quite expensive on ratepayers to run compared to what their income is.
Point noted. Yep. Just on the surplus, and it has loss in brackets before council overhead. Those little dashes in front, that means minus, does it? Or are the losses in brackets, or should they be in the brackets?
The minus means it's a loss.
It's just a little bit confusing. If you could put brackets, it would be good to instigate a loss where they, because of the description, whereas there's places in there where there's no dollars at all and there's a little minus in them too. It's just a little bit confusing for...
We'll change the format of that to make it clearer.
If it's simple to change, put a brackets in, it would make it easy to understand.
So you want a loss to have brackets, or you want revenue to have brackets? The loss with brackets.
Yeah, thank you. As per the description. Yeah. Any further questions on EA Networks? Thank you. It takes us to 1:30. Have we got guests coming online from Christchurch NZ? Kath Lowe, Tracy Wilson and Bruce Moffat. How will I know if they're here?
We've got them for 1:30, so you've been on time.
Yeah. Okay, they're still coming in, so we might move over to item number 7, which is the Mayor's report. And that is on page 58. Thanks, Sarah. And the Mayor's report, I wrote this shortly after the last council meeting, so there's not a lot of time to write these reports between the meetings to meet the deadlines to get into the paper copy or into the actual report. So, yeah, the main, many meetings there. The main one, I suppose, of note is the rooftop shout for the new building. Thank you, councillors, for attending. The Natal Love employees and contractors enjoyed the sausage sizzle we put on for them. And I think there's a little article coming up in probably, is it today's paper or probably tomorrow's paper?
Just gone out.
Just gone out, is it? Right. Yeah, so yeah, a good PR exercise, I think, was received well by the contractors, different to the old days of a roof shout when you come along with a box of beer and had a yarn. No longer allowed on a building site, but sausage sizzle was certainly appreciated just as well. Caroline.
Just a quick question, Mr Mayor, regarding on the 10th of June you met with the Red Cross representative. What was that around?
That was around the employment of the former refugees, with us council working closer to get the former refugees into work. We know of businesses needing employees. The Red Cross, who have the contract for putting the former refugees into work, have the potential employees on the other side, so we're just a wee bit of glue in the middle. It was a good meeting and good outcomes. Yeah. Angus.
Mr Mayor, on the 15th of June, you're at the Canterbury Mayoral Forum. That's all very good, great. The regional leaders group, are we allowed to know who they are, or are they a quiet group?
Every Mayor's report, or some Mayor's report, you have a confession. 15th of June was today. That meeting was at 8 o'clock this morning.
So, sorry, it still doesn't change my question. Who are the leaders, regional leaders group?
The Mayors of Canterbury. Hamish will probably sum it up better than I. Yeah.
Yeah, the regional leaders group does include the Mayors of Canterbury, but it also includes all the heads of the various government departments. It includes EB representatives, and they were particularly stood up around the response to COVID. So it's had a very big COVID focus over the last 2 years, a very good way for many parts of the Canterbury region to feed in essentially information, to receive information from the health response, and then as it moved to include a welfare response as well as the health response. There's a lot of good information. So that's what the regional leadership group was set up to do. It's starting to ask itself as we get more familiar with living with COVID, are there other issues in Canterbury that would benefit from the collective wisdom of that gathering? And there's some work going on now, and already there's issues like truancy, like mental health, and such issues which are of concern to many communities in Canterbury. And is there a way where outcomes would be improved by that group having a connected conversation in response to some of those other issues? So that's what that is all about.
Yeah, and generally they're every second week, and the chief executive and myself get invited. Either both of us will attend. It's via Zoom, or one of us will attend. So we do share it, or we'll both be there. So there's always one person there from Ashburton. Stuart.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. What's the meeting on the 14th of June? To Wharakai Mana to Mana Hui.
That's the work that's been going on with Mary Lakes up in the Wharakai area. We met yesterday weekend with there was Doc, MFE, MPI, all the associated people that should be there with their iwi, getting the plan for improving the quality of water and the environment up there.
Local run holders?
They weren't at that meeting, but they are involved all the way through. Yeah. Nothing further. I see they're here. Nothing further. I'll move we receive the Mayor's report. Second it. Councillor Lovett. All in favour, please say aye. Yeah, carried. Thank you. So I think we have our guests now from Christchurch NZ. I see Bruce, you're there. Can you hear us, Bruce? Bruce, Kath, Tracy.
I'm not sure they can hear us, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, I see our microphones on silent.
Should be able to hear us.
No, we're on mic. We're on mute.
We're on. We're muted. Up top there.
Correct. No, it does? Well, it looks like ours. Can you hear us, Bruce?
There's a snake across the mic.
That one? Yep.
Yeah.
Can you hear us, Bruce? Gotcha. Welcome. Oh, great. Finally got there. It was us. Thank you. Welcome, Bruce, Kath, and Tracy. We'll just hand over to you actually, and you're going to take us through your report. We've got your report in front of us, but take us through, and we'll have questions afterwards if that's okay.
That's good.
Great. Floor's yours.
Kia ora, everyone. Actually, I'll start. I'm not sure whether we have introduced you previously to Tracy Wilson, who is the Acting General Manager of Destination and Attractions. So she's joining the meeting today as well. And
welcome, Tracy.
Thank you, and I have come down and met Hamish and a few of you. Thanks.
Yep.
We'll assume the paper is being read, and I'll just move on to some of the highlights and the focuses over the past quarter for you. And I guess, as per the paper, it comes as no surprise that there's been a real focus on re-engaging with the world, and in terms of both trade and media opportunities. As noted, we have attended the Australia Ski Show in Sydney and Melbourne with the pure intent to drive winter visitation, attended a Tourism New Zealand Australia Roadshow to re-engage with key Australia trade, and we also participated in events that were being hosted by Christchurch International Airport over in Australia. Soon after, we hosted key inbound tour operators from Auckland to the region. And they visited Methven and Upuki Falls, which was a fantastic opportunity given the busyness of that sector right at the moment. Noted in our report are some of the challenges, but the most exciting update I can give, which was going to be a detraction to, I guess, the re-emergence of international visitation, was the COVID testing requirements into New Zealand, which today, you might be aware, is touted as being removed as early as next week, which really will make a significant difference for us. It has been a very big detractor to visitors returning to New Zealand unless they're visiting family and relatives. We do have some significant concern around airline capacity. It's a challenge across the whole country. At the moment, the airlines flying into New Zealand, particularly Trans-Tasman, are operating at capacity levels in excess of 85% occupancy and many north of 90%. So seats are particularly last minute, and that short lead time are 1,000-ish one way, which certainly prevents that leisure travel market. The trade are overwhelmed. This is another real concern. There are not enough people to service the requirements of those visitors that are now wanting to travel. So they're becoming overwhelmed. Many of the trade who historically might have focused on the South Pacific or Australasia or whatever, they're now looking after the whole world. So the requirements of them have grown, and the number of people available to do the work has diminished. And so there are a lot of adverts in place at the moment to try and get more staff. With cost of living and some of the realities that we're all facing right at the moment, it's an industry that is not appealing and becoming, it's not appealing for many at the moment. So that's causing a challenge, as is workforce shortages. There are also airfare offers to other parts of the world, particularly the Pacific and UK, which are very, very competitive. The capacity constraints partnered with these very, very cheap fares. To the UK, there has been a drive to get people over there one way to support the workforce situation, and those airfares have been as low as $150, $200 to the UK. So we're unable to compete with that. The other challenge, I guess, that we are very aware of is that the ski fraternity in Australia, which was really, really amped up to travel here last year, is not so excited this year, with the whole world being open and potentially also with the reality around cost of living and being a bit thoughtful about how the money is being spent. New Zealand is no longer seen as the destination of choice for that market, where last year we very much saw that they were keen to travel here. So I don't want to sound like the doomsday merchant, but what I'm trying to say is that there is a lot of work that needs to be done to keep Mid-Canterbury and the region front of mind for the trade who are currently having to look at all options on the table, and the work that we are doing needs to be really, really captivating to grab their attention. And I did bring, just as an example, and this is part of a campaign that we're currently in market with, and it's a campaign that runs right up until September. And so this is a domestic campaign, but there are elements of it that are also being fed through to Australia alongside a campaign with Tourism New Zealand for broadsheet. And I'm sorry that we're not there to show you this in person, but for those of you who are familiar with Mind Food magazine, Mind Food is a really popular consumer magazine, and it is published in New Zealand and also distributed in Australia. There's a very big article at the moment. I'm sorry that's really grainy, but it's worth a read actually. It's a beautiful magazine, and there's a really big story in here about the region and Methven and Upuki pools and just how wonderful the experience of travelling here is. So that's currently in market in New Zealand and in Australia.
Could you photocopy that page and just send it to it, just email it to us, just the relevant Mid-Canterbury bit?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I do. Absolutely. And so as mentioned, we are in market with an Explore CHC campaign. It's the richest content campaign we've ever run. So there are stories still being produced at the moment that tell the story of Christchurch is just the beginning of an amazing experience into the wider Canterbury region. There are about 50 content pieces. So there are stories, and those stories are going to sit in a library that will be reshared for years to come. So the campaign is actually building an incredible library that has a purpose well beyond September this year. But right up until September, you are going to see a whole lot of different images and stories which tell the story of Christchurch is just the beginning of a beautiful Canterbury experience. I also wanted to update you on some other work that we have currently got in the pipeline. One of them is a project that Bruce and I have been discussing around trying to raise awareness within the school environment around opportunities, particularly with the Aviation Museum. We're going to do some work around just supporting, I guess, touching base with those operators who were internationally reliant, just to see how their businesses are coping and growing, hopefully, now that the borders have opened. We have a half-day it's terrible. We've got a half-day planning session coming up with the advisory group, which is about scene setting for the year ahead. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that we are doing a lot of work at the moment around the return of cruise to Littleton. And you might think that that doesn't have a huge impact on Mid-Canterbury. It does, because there are a number of operators in Mid-Canterbury that actually benefit enormously from cruise. And right at the moment, we are facing approximately 180,000 new visitors coming into Littleton between October and March of 2023. So that visitor arrival experience is front and centre of our thinking at the moment, and how we navigate their arrival experience into Littleton and then them being bussed out into the regions. So that will see a real spike in visitation to Mid-Canterbury. The other thing that I just wanted to talk to really briefly, and I'm sorry I'm just doing all the talking, but I figure that you're going to ask a lot of questions at the end, is that the destination management plan process is well underway now. We issued the RFP in April. RFP closed. We had an incredible selection of specialist agencies who pitched for the work from all around the world. We could not have been more excited and pleased by the level of expertise that we have the opportunity, I guess, to work alongside. So we have. We're down to a short list, and we have got meetings coming up over the course of the next few weeks. I don't know, maybe, Tracy, do you want to talk to Destination Management Plan?
Sure. I mean, it is a really important, I guess, step forward as, I guess, the whole industry looks at, regenerative tourism and thinking about destination management versus destination marketing. And it's something that obviously is pivotal for all of us. So we had, as Kath said, 11 really high quality submissions. And we have the airport are part of the review panel, and Mana Whenua here, and expertise internally. So we'll go through that process and appoint a chosen vendor. The key part of this is that independence. This isn't a Christchurch NZ plan. This is very much a plan that is going to be driven from grassroots, and the stakeholder engagement piece will be a really strong part of it. So you can expect that once that's appointed, obviously we'll be updating you regularly throughout that process. We have a stakeholder engagement plan and actually a lead that we've appointed here at Christchurch NZ in Julia Hardacre, who might have even been in touch with some of you. So to keep you updated, but then the community will have a part to play in sharing their thoughts about the destination. Great.
And I think probably the only thing to add to that is that the appointment of that agency is going to happen really quickly, and that work on the ground and the engagement with stakeholders we're expecting will start as soon as July. So it's all going to happen very quickly, and we have set within the brief that went out to was uploaded to GETS, we had the deadline of delivery of destination management plans as being May 23. So it's less than a year that we're going to turn around that whole body of work, and those that pitched for the work believed that it was achievable. So that's very exciting.
That's great. Thanks, Kath and Tracy, for those words. Bruce, you have nothing to add? It all been said?
No, I think so.
Yeah, good. That's great. And I'll ask councillors for questions shortly, but I just heard, and you mentioned about staff when the tourists are turning up and shortage of staff, and it was on Radio New Zealand this morning, ski time in Methven. They can't open 7 days a week, just haven't got the staff. They can only run 80% capacity in the accommodation because they haven't got the staff. That flows through every industry in New Zealand. And if they don't have the staff and the tourists turn up, their experience is not going to be probably what it should be. So I assume you're doing a lot of work on that, as well as you're bringing them in, but they need to get the right experience when they get here, don't they?
Absolutely, that visitor experience is the centre of our thing. But the other thing that there's a little bit of sure what's happening there. I hear myself. The other thing that we're really conscious of is that those operators that are in the business are many of them are working they're working 24/7, and they are doing everything within the business, and so their level of exhaustion is reaching really worrying levels. They've navigated through the pandemic, and they've been devastated for all the reasons that we're aware. They're now back in business, and they're having to do everything without a lot of support. So we're very aware of their mental and physical health at the moment too, which is something that I can speak for us all. We are monitoring closely.
Great, because I think you need to go right to the top, probably the immigration minister, and so because they're looking for those backpackers. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the benefit. There's going to be a change, obviously, there. So obviously that's something, you're right. We actually need the number of people. But I think to your point, Kath, I think all of us are very mindful, even industry events that we're running for operators, we're very mindful of actually showing support and for them and helping them. Just as a small aside, with exactly the same issue, there are some massive events that actually happened at Te Pai, the new convention centre. The Crown Plaza Hotel next door lent some of their hotel staff for a major event. There are some of the things, that collaboration that we want to build in the sector right now, because we all need to work together.
Great, good idea. We've got some questions here, and Councillor McMillan's first.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm glad you brought that up about the support for the for the people in the tourism businesses, because we see it in Methven with everyone is burnt out and the ski season hasn't even started yet. So I'm glad you're monitoring that. My question was just on the ski shows you've been to, and obviously it would have been nice to be back there after a couple of years. What's the interest in school groups, Aussie school groups this time round? Are they sort of thinking about coming back to New Zealand with their ski trips, or is it something that that's kind of holding off?
That's a good question. So I met with Snow and Ski, which are a large wholesaler based in Brisbane that specialise in school groups. They do have a number of school groups that are looking for 23-24 season, but nothing in this season at this stage. It's been, from what I can take from the meeting that I had, a lot of the schools are holding off still pending the recovery of pandemic, but also they're looking to actually go to a lot of the ski fields that are in Australia at the moment as opposed to travelling internationally. I also spoke to Dave Dines recently as well, who's also been involved in a lot of school groups locally in Methven, and he said that there's definitely school groups that are inquiring around 2023 season, but he's certainly not aware of any for 22.
Thank you. And just another question, if I can. I've just heard through the grapevine that a lot of Australian tourists who are planning to come over to ski at Mount Hutt are finding it hard to get accommodation up until sort of August, I think, is when things. So July is obviously pretty booked out in Methven already. So are you hearing that, or is that just hearsay?
No, I'm definitely hearing that as well.
Yeah.
That, towards around about till about the 18th of August for some bizarre reason, and that's also Methven Heli Ski as well. So Methven Heli Ski is completely booked out for August, which is a pretty good indicator of the Australian market being here in some way or form, because they love that stuff.
Great, thank you.
Stuart?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, my question is, how much are Pookie Pools, Methven Heli Ski, all that contributing? The ratepayers are putting 200,000 into tourism mid-Canterbury towards the Christchurch entity. You spend 95% of it in Methven, the BB Mount Hutt, then it's the pools, and yet traditionally Methven tourist operators are very, very reluctant to actually contribute themselves towards it. The question is, how much income are you getting from the locals towards this advertising? You read your advertising, the hot pools are front and centre at the moment. Are they contributing?
So we don't ask for any of the operators to contribute towards our media or campaign activity per se. As with Tourism New Zealand, there need to be hooks that catalyse travel, and those hooks need to be really appealing and quite unique. And right at the moment, Upuki Pools is unique, and it stimulates an interest to travel. So there is a benefit for the region, for everyone, in Upuki Pools being the new product that the media are inclined towards. We don't ask for an investment for that. And right at the moment, all of the products that we highlight in our campaign activity, we've got to remember that the last few years have been incredibly tough for them. The fact that Upuki is new is a benefit for the region, but it certainly wouldn't be our preference to be asking anyone to pay money for campaign activity that stimulates and drives visitation.
Thank you. Lynette?
Yeah, just looking at like post-COVID now, the rest of the world's moved on, and going to the overseas visitors, do you think the market here in New Zealand, they kind of look at us, we're still wearing masks, still living, we haven't moved forward, is that a deterrent for people to come here, where other countries you can walk around freely?
Yes, it is. In short, it is. And I think that today's announcement around the COVID testing being dropped is a step in the right direction. But you're absolutely right. In the UK and Europe, you know, and the United States, COVID is not a conversation that's front and centre anymore. And right at the moment, New Zealand is considered to be a real challenge to travel to, and it's not appealing. Have you got something to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was talking to a media person. We've got meetings on at the moment, which is a major business event. Conference for all of New Zealand happening at the moment. I spoke to a journalist from the UK this morning, just flown in, and he spoke about how they don't even record their COVID tests anymore. It's just like having a cold, and that he's actually just really noticed the profile of COVID in our community, and even our staff across from Australia noting the use of masks over here, etc. So you're right, but I think there's one piece is about living it as we all do, but the other is that perception, and that's the important piece we need to shift. So those thinking about travelling here now, actually things like the announcement of the test going will make it feel like things are freeing up. So those big media announcements are really important.
I think it's probably time we pressured them to get rid of these masks. Now, the other big issue that I'm concerned about right across the whole industry in New Zealand, we seem to have a shortage of workers. And one's got to ask, where have they all going, or gone, or hiding, or are they on benefits? And should we kind of be looking at that strategy going there and trying to get some of these people back into the workforce?
It's a huge concern, and it's one that's being lobbied. So, it's probably one of the top conversations that's being had at senior level to central government. We've got an issue around international workforce. We basically need those visitors to come in from abroad. They were really the base for a lot of our industry. They were the base workers that we needed. We needed the backpackers, and we've made it too hard for them to come back. And so that is a huge risk. The other real risk is that the outbound planes leaving New Zealand are full of New Zealanders leaving to go and live abroad and work abroad. So it's a double whammy. And you are absolutely right. It is probably one of the biggest risks as we head into the busy season. And it is one that we are definitely talking about. We actually have Mr. Nash from Christchurch at the moment. He was here last night for the opening of the event that Tracy just mentioned. And he's been wandering around this morning. And I can guarantee you that 9 out of 10 people talking to him are saying, boy, we've got a real problem here and we need help.
And he does consistently talk. I was thinking about the Otago Policy School when that event was probably 4 months ago, and he was very focused on actually creating an attractive career path and growth in this sector, because one thing is to attract people transiently in, but that doesn't solve the issue. We need to actually make it a desirable industry to work in. So I think there's that goes from the education sector, etc. There's quite a lot of work, but the Minister is very much mindful of this, and it's something we all need to work on. Yeah.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just thank you for your report. Just one clarification, if I can. It's a word I never heard of. It's media famil.
Familiar. It's a familiarisation. So, sorry, that's industry lingo, which is not very helpful. So it's when we familiarise.
So what is it?
Just explaining.
Provide them with an experience.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just do want to point out, because we do familiars for media, but we do them for different buyers, etc. It is really important, as you know, when people write stories, to have experienced it, and that is something that as the world opens up, we are seeing more of. And because there's been such a turnover both in journalism and in trade, it is actually a period of time of refamiliarisation, because people have not got the knowledge in these regions anymore.
Thank you. There doesn't seem to be any more questions this end. Anything further to add, Bruce, Kath, or Tracy? Comment? No. Well, thank you very much for your report. Well done, and we'll see you again in 3 months' time, I think, is it? Whenever. Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye. Councillors, can we have a move in a second that we received the Christchurch NZ report? Councillor McMillan, Councillor Brown. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. That takes us to the end of the open part of the meeting, and we're going to come back into open at 2:45 for our guest, Cheyenne. So thank you, Jonathan.
I'll move.
So if you wish to come back, 2:45 will be underway again, or it'll be online too, Jonathan. Okay, thank you.
Move government committee.
Thanks, Stuart. Moved, seconded. Lane, all in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you.